I see a lot of gifted people, and I've been guilty of it in the past, where there's pain that I'm not working on for whatever reason, whether I'm afraid to or don't understand it or don't think I get to, I don't have the space to. And we work and work and work and work and work, and we go, go, go until we burn ourselves out. Ungrieved grief and imagination for neurodivergent leaders. Hi, friends. It's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me. And today we're talking about a subject that's often misunderstood, and that is grief. And then I also want to address the ungrieved grief and how it applies and impacts us as neurodivergent leaders. There's so many pieces to this. So I'm just going to cover some big overarching ideas, and you can say to yourself whether you identify with these things or not. I first want to start with giving you my definition of grief, because everybody has different definitions that they operate under, but I want to have us all on the same wavelength. For me, the definition of grief is a conflicting mass of human emotion following any significant change of behavior. So grief happens when you get engaged and you go from single to in a committed relationship or getting married. It happens when you change jobs, change houses, buy a new car, somebody dies. Big changes happen in the world. Anytime there's a significant change to our behavior or our way of being, then we go through a grieving process. Now, a lot of people are familiar with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's ideas of the stages of grief, and those apply somewhat, but there's also other pieces here that I think a lot of people miss because they simply look at her 5 stages and move on. But what you need to understand is there's ungrieved grief. There is that grief that neurodivergent people, and I think all people actually, carry around, and it affects our world. It affects our imagination. It affects the way we create. It affects our relationships. It affects how successful our business is. It affects how we interact with other people. And it really plays a role in our self-talk and self-care. Caring about ourselves. There's so many pieces here. And we, as strong, independent, gifted, neurodivergent people, are often tasked in our society with just keep on pushing on. Big boys don't cry. Pull up your bootstraps and keep going. Put on your big girl panties. All of those things are helping us deny who we are, our emotional experience, and then complicates this ungrieved grief that then becomes a complicated grief, which then, as time unfolds, can become more and more and more of an issue. And so it's very important that we really realize that there are so many factors, but not only that they affect every one of us. So have you ever been in a situation where something small happens and you or the other person just blows up? So the response to the small thing is much bigger or very different, divergent from what you would think would happen. Well, that's a sign of unresolved grief. That's a sign of ungrieved grief in that person. And that kind of grief that can help somebody explode or implode affects our imagination, our ability to comprehend, to see things, to vision, to move our lives forward in productive and meaningful ways. So there's an invisible weight that we carry, I think, and that invisible weight has to do with the fact that very often gifted people aren't given the space to process and integrate a loss, whether it's a loss of a friendship or a loved one, or maybe changing schools when we're younger, all of those things. Where is the time to integrate and process the loss? Recently, I've had 2 different clients actually in the last couple of weeks where I say it's time to integrate. We need to take all the information you've been gathering, all the experience and emotional feelings you've been having, and allow them to weave into your system, to integrate into your psyche, your paradigm, the way you do the world. And both people said, "What? I don't even know what that is." And so what that tells me is that they've been so highly over reinforced for intellect and learning and gaining knowledge that somewhere along the line, they miss the fact that they're human beings, not machines. And we have to integrate information as we go. Otherwise, we're just like a computer on a stick, and we're ignoring our bodies and we're ignoring our essence. And then we're going to keep falling flat or keep having depression or anxiety. And it builds on itself, and it doesn't end up very pretty. Our situation here with our ungrieved grief is that I think a lot of us have some and we don't even know it. And I think some people know they have it and they just don't want to deal with it. So they run either overworking or in relationships and get distracted that way, or substances or something, right? And so what I want to talk about is that idea that we all have ungrieved grief. And our job is to continue to integrate, weave together, and rectify wherever our energy goes cattywampus. The second thing I want to talk about is that in leadership roles, typically in Western society, I think it's changing a little, but not very fast. We're also very over-reinforced for intellect and cognitive linear processing, which is really good on one level. Well, what about having any kind of intuitive nature or emotional nature or spiritual understanding? What about empathy and compassion? What about caring, like genuinely caring for another person? All of those kinds of things are not real reinforced in leadership roles in this world. And that's why a lot of neurodivergent people find themselves in small startups or being an entrepreneur themselves, because the connection to other humans and what motivates a neurodivergent person isn't just knowledge and money. There's much more to it. And so we want ourselves to be comfortable with having a strategy for how we're feeling emotionally, being spiritually connected. And spiritually connected, I mean connected to the universe, to nature, to the things about the world that excite us, to our own purpose and mission, to the gift we're bringing to the world. That's what spiritual connection is to me. It's independent of religiosity or the idea that we have a religion. That means to bind or constrict. Spirituality means to set free. So I'm looking at this from a larger viewpoint of living our mission, of allowing our heart's desire to emerge through us out into the world, into something amazing. And the neat thing is it changes, that what it looks like changes, even though the essence is the same. It's just a beautiful thing. But so often, gifted neurodivergent people get so over-reinforced for what's going on in our head that whole part of our beautiful essence gets overlooked. And that's not good, and it's not fun. So we want to make sure that we're integrating things, because we keep going, and we can create burnout. I've seen a lot of gifted people, and I've been guilty of it in the past, where there's pain that I'm not working on for whatever reason, whether I'm afraid to, or don't understand it, or don't think I get to, I don't have the space to. And we work and work and work and work and work, and we go until we burn ourselves out. And then we create a crisis, a healing crisis or an emotional crisis, because we're trying to do life in a way that is not friendly to our being. It's vitally important that we learn how to bring all of us together, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual, our physical, all of our beings, all parts of us together to move through life. Now, we know we live in a world that's not exactly meant to do that, and we're over-reinforced for one part. So it's kind of like working out our upper body all the time in the gym and never working out our legs, and then we look funny because we're top heavy, right? Or the people that work out their legs all the time and they have really big quads, but they've never lifted anything with their arms, and they have like little chicken wings, right? All of those things aren't helpful. What is helpful is that we learn how to bring everything together, and it takes practice, and it often takes guidance. I was at a Genius Recovery, a network meeting group weekend thing, and one of the things somebody said was, you can't read a label from inside the jar. And that's true. I loved that phrase. And I say it a lot because it's true. And gifted people are expected to be able to read our own label from inside the jar, but that's not how it works. We have to have people in our corner too. In fact, I think we need more than somebody who's neurotypical, because there's so many different things happening. That's why I love my work, because all the different people that I get to engage with and work with and create retreats for and do seminars for and do individual work and family work with all have all these nuances. And it's the integration that allows their imagination to be set free because the ungrieved grief no longer is blocking them. Now, also here, I want to talk about the fact that a lot of us have grief, right? But it's also kind of like a hallway. It can be an avenue through which our imagination is allowed to flourish. So often it blocks things, right? But it also can be seen as a pathway, which I find to be quite fascinating because I've channeled some of my own pain and grief into creative things that have turned out beautiful. I know a lot of you musicians who write amazing, deep, heartfelt songs, but what are they doing? They're healing their grief. They're allowing the grief to be the fire, the catalyst for their imagination, and they bring something into the world that can be heartfelt by millions and can be very healing for them and maybe other people too, right? So our grief is a block some of the time. It's a pathway if we allow it to be. I always say when I'm feeling lots of pain, I'll say, okay, how can this serve me and others? Like I go within, I close my eyes, I breathe, and I ask, how can this pain, this thing I'm feeling, serve me and serve others? How can we use it for our good, for our benefit? It doesn't always have to be a problem, right? I think about it all the time because so many people tell me, oh, I have all this pain and grief and it's in my way. And I'm like, yes, it is because you say it is. The grief can be that hallway, that portal, if you will, to imagination if we allow it to be. But we have to be willing to let go of the old version of us that stayed stuck in the grief in order to embrace the newer version of us that can use the grief in our favor. And that takes some work and some understanding and some personal dedication to doing the healing work that it requires to do. Now, sadly, we live in a culture where most people don't want to do the work on themselves. They'd rather do something, a distracting type of work outside of themselves. But once you get involved in really healing yourself and working through these things, the imagination that you can grasp and experience and the things that you can vision become unbelievably more powerful and amazing. So we want to come together as neurodivergent leaders. We want to come together understanding that our ungrieved grief is a pot of beautiful energy that can allow us to ignite parts of our imagination in our world that we wouldn't otherwise get to see. Grief can be a very heavy burden. It can hold us back. It can create depression or anxiety or internal organ issues, right? It can create all of those things. We also can learn how to sit in the grief and be there and allow ourselves to see how it can serve us. Because the moment we take the power away from it being a block, it opens up to serving us. So it's really amazing how this is going to work. So we want to create ways that we can acknowledge our feelings. Like I have rituals with certain candles and certain pens I write in my journal with and all these little things, because those things allow my system to continue to weave and integrate all these amazing things. So I hope, friends, that you understand and that you have been reminded in this episode that ungrieved grief can be your doorway to imagination. Ungrieved grief does not have to block you, though for many people it does. And ungrieved grief has a function and a purpose. It's not something to run from. It's also not something to hold on to as a badge of honor. It's something to see, witness, and allow to float through. See it, witness it, allow it to flow through, like puffy clouds. That's the way it goes. Neurodivergent leaders and those of us who are intensely sensitive have more work to do in different levels because we experience things in nuanced ways. So what I want to remind you and leave you with after with this show, I'm having a hard time talking today, you guys. Anyway, oh my word, oh my word. But it's kind of funny because sometimes talking about the things that are a little tricky make it so it's tricky to talk about these things. And that's okay. It's okay, right? We want to realize that when we're overwhelmed or anxious, or we're not sleeping right, or things are happening, we're off a little bit, that means it's time to look at what's going on. Is your heart and your mind and your soul and your physical being in alignment? Are you ignoring your body for the sake of your mind? Are you staying stuck in overwhelming, overthinking paradigms and going down rabbit holes and ignoring your own physical, emotional, and spiritual needs? What are you doing? That's the question. So I invite you to come to the retreat with us in January. If you'd like to join me on a get to know you call or read any of my books. I have book number 10 is at the printer right now. So there's all kinds of ways that you can engage and learn and grow and fuel that doorway that allows what's happening with you to fuel your imagination and bring something amazing to the world that is uniquely your vision. There's nobody else who got the call, only you. So until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, remember to keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. And I invite you to allow your ungrieved grief to be that portal and that doorway to allowing your imagination to flourish. And in that permission is your own healing and freedom. Until the next episode, be well.